Today we're going to be taking a look at making your own lithium-ion packs. So I'm going to be making 2 packs, so we'll end up looking a lot like this. These were labeled as epoch cells, but I believe they're actually Molicel ones that the Epoch company bought from Molicel, perhaps when Molicel was still going through testing them or something. That's these ones that I made about a year ago were made using the Molicel P28A cells. This time I'm going to be using these ones, which are the equivalents to the Molicel P28B cell. The only difference really being that these ones can put out a little bit more current. These ones are rated for 40 amps constant, whereas the P28A are rated for 35 amps constant. So it's an 18650 size cell with a capacity of 2800 milliamp hours. So I've got 12 of these. Actually, I got 13 so that I have a spare. But I'm going to use 12 of them and make 2 6S packs. So for tools that we're going to be needing, I've got a couple of different sizes of wire cutters here, some plastic tweezers so that they can't short out on the lithium-ion cells, a knife and a pair of scissors, and also a ruler here. I've got a few different kinds of tape here. This is an insulated high temperature tape called Captain tape. Got a couple of different sizes of that, and just your regular standard electrical tape, and also some double-sided foam tape, and I'm just going to use this to help stick my foam padding for the ends of the battery down. And I've got some heat shrink, 3/16 heat shrink for the main battery leads, and then I've got some 3/4 and smaller than 1/8. Might be metric, but probably 1/8 would do fine as well. And then I've also got some 95 millimeter wide clear, I think this is PVC heat shrink. Oh, I can't remember. I'll have to put a note in the video here about it, but it's 95 millimeters wide. So it's just the right size. Actually between 90 and 110 millimeters. Anywhere in there will do fine for a 6S 18650 pack. And I've also got some reflective tape, a few different kinds of reflective tape. I like to use this on the outside of the battery just so that it's easier to find the drone if it goes down. I also like to use a piece of thin, hard foam padding on each end of the battery pack. I usually find this in other electronics with flight controllers or ESCs, things like that. When you buy them, they often come with this hard foam padding with them. And I've got my 2 6S balance leads here. So I'd recommend getting 8-inch balance leads if you can. I think 6-inch will just make it, but you'll have a little bit of room to spare if you get 8-inch ones. And then this is the wire for the main battery lead. This is 14 gauge, your standard 200-degree rated silicone covered wire. And because I'm going to be making these packs using a soldering iron, I'm using small jumpers, or whatever you want to call it, to go in between from cell to cell. And these I've cut to about 25 millimeters long and then pre-tinned each end of them. Last thing, a couple of XT60 connectors. And I'll also mention here for the cells, as you can see, I've added a wrap to it over top of the wrap that it comes with from the factory. And I've also, underneath the wrap, I've added another one of these insulating rings, just for that extra bit of insulation and reduce the likelihood of anything shorting out. Manufacturers recommend only using a spot welder to make lithium-ion cells into battery packs. And I think this is for 2 reasons. One of them, I think, because of liability and the risks of shorting a cell out if you're soldering, as well as the heat that solder creates. So when soldering to the cell, it'll heat up the ends of the cell more than a spot welder will. In my own opinion, I think misusing a lithium-ion pack once or twice and getting it really hot while you're flying will probably damage it more than using some solder to make the battery pack. In any case, I've been soldering my battery packs for years. I've got dozens of them, and I've never had a problem with any of them. I've never had a battery pack fail, and I've never had a lead or wire pop off one of the cells. So when someone complains about the wires popping off or not being a good solid connection to the battery. That's because you need to scour the surface gently first, or there is some soldering acids that you can use, but I haven't been able to find those, at least ones that are gonna work well. So simply scratching the surface with a bit of sandpaper is all you need to do. There, and that's it. That's all you need to do. It's just got a coating on it that's meant to keep the metal from oxidizing, but this coating is not very good for soldering to. Once the coating's been sanded a little bit, now solder will stick into there just fine. All right, I'm just gonna finish off preparing the rest of the cells that I need to get ready here. So the first step is gonna be wrapping these cells into pairs. So I'm putting these 2 wraps of tape on here the way I am, because afterwards I'm going to use a glue gun to just put a little bit of a dab of glue there to hold things tight. So this way the tape will help make things easy to work with for now, and it'll hold them together while that glue settles. All right, now I'm going through and gluing just one side of this, because I want to leave the other side open so that we can, we might need to pass the balance lead through. So I'm only gluing these all on one side. If you don't have a glue gun, you're probably fine just adding a little extra tape or something. I just like to make the cells not be able to move around too much in the pack. They're wrapped and lightly glued together here. So now we can move on to adding some solder to both ends. And one thing I didn't cover in the supplies list, our tools and whatever, is the soldering iron. So you're going to want a pretty good soldering iron for this. You need one that senses the temperature and heats back up quickly. And you can do it with a cheaper soldering iron, but it's going to be a little bit more difficult because you really want to try to do this quickly. All right, well, I can't find the flex pen that I normally use. I'm not sure where I put it. So I'm just going to use this flex paste. Should be better than nothing. After scratching the surface like this, it's probably will even work without any flex paste, but definitely doesn't hurt to use some. And the whole trick, like I was saying earlier, it's just all about the heat. So the trick with it is just to get it on there, get it soldered, and get a good connection, and then get the heat away. Definitely used a little too much paste there, but I should really be using a thicker solder. This stuff's too thin, so it takes longer just to feed enough in there. Of course, on the positive terminals on this side, you want to be a little more careful. Because if the solder drips down into one of these cracks down the side there, then that will short circuit the cell. This thickness of solder is really more appropriate for electronics, like working on your flight controllers and so on. But in this case, it's a little bit inconvenient, so I've twisted it up that'll that's one success pack worth of cells prepared there, or tinned up and ready. I'm just going to make up the rest of these now for the other pack that I'm making, and then we'll get on to the next stage of building these. Okay, now that the cells are all tinned on both ends, we're going to go through and add one of these 14 gauge wire pieces to one end of each of the pairs. So I like to just have a little bend on them so that there's a bit of room. If there's a crash or something, the cells can move and the wire's not going to tug on the ends of the cells really too badly because there's a little bit of slack in it. So now we're just going to tape these all together here to kind of assemble the final pack. Just to recap here, we've got all our cells set in alternating, positive, negative, alternating everywhere. The other side, we've got our connecting wires between positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative. So these two are connected and these two are connected and then these two. So now on the opposite side, we're going to connect these ones and these ones. So here and here. So that way we have one continuous circuit. It goes in here, through there, up through this one that we're about to put in, down across there, and up through the other one we're about to put in, back through, and then out to our negative. So I'm going to position both my packs the same way like this. So I know I'm just putting my two wires on right here, and same thing on this one. Just going right there. I always like to do the positive side first because it's just a little bit more tricky because you have to worry about making sure you don't short anything out. Whereas the negative side, the entire outside of this can, the whole thing is negative except for the positive part. So the negative side is really easy. At least as far as shorting, having to worry about shorting something out. And here, I mean, you obviously want to just make very sure that you're not connecting these two, because then it would just be a short circuit in a circle. So just double check that you're connecting these two that are not connected already on this side. You can see that's got a nice shiny puddle around it, and the wire's kind of like sunk right into the puddle with the shiny surface on it, so you know that's a good solid solder connection. All that's left to do is put the main XT60 leads on. Putting a little bit of heat shrink on one side of each of these wires that are going to be the battery lead. Just so once we get things put on here, there's no chance of them touching together and shorting out. When I put my battery leads on, I like to put them kind of like this, like coming in together like that. And then when I'm done, I usually use a bit of hot glue and just glue the leads right in place there. So when I put them on here, I'm just gonna give them a little turn towards the inside, or I give them a little turn towards the middle here. Now I like to add a piece of heat shrink. Oh, I may not be able to put it on while this other heat shrink's on. Yeah. I use this as kind of a, I think of it as sort of a bit of strain relief, so the wire doesn't get bent too much in one spot. Just want those all the way down right at the bottom of the wire, as far as they can go. And I'll shrink those in place. And we might as well move right on to putting the XT60 on the end here. So I'm just gonna tin the XT60 here to start. Just double check those both look like nice shiny tops on the globs, connecting everything really well. So we can slide this on. Okay, we're almost there. It's just wrapping it and doing the balance lead left to go. Now we need to install the balance lead. It's got 7 wires. One wire goes to the very end here, same as the lead of the XT60. And then the red one, so the red one goes to the positive, and the black one on the other side goes to the negative. And then these ones in the middle, the 5 in the middle, go to each of these wires that we put on. And it can go to either end of the wire. And now they just have to go in order, the same order that the current is going to follow through the wires here. So red goes to, we'll put the red one to the same spot as the XT60 lead. And then the next wire just goes to the wire connecting. So then this one would go down and connect to either side here. And then as we keep following our connection through the battery, here's the next connection. So that's where the next wire is going to go, either side. And we keep following it. There's the next connection. So that's where the next wire goes. And we keep following it up through this way. That's where the next wire is going to go. Either side of that. And there's one more of these jumper or shunt wires or whatever you want to call it left right there, and that's where our second last wire goes. And then yeah, the last one goes, like we were talking about at the beginning, the last one goes just right to the same spot as the XT60 lead. So now I just try to feed these through as neatly as I can, and the trick here with these is trying to keep them nice and neat, and also to avoid going over top of the terminals here. And then if you do, like what I would do here is put some Captain tape down there, and then run the one that's going from here and the one that's going from here over top of that tape so that it's insulated. So if you ever have a crash and this little wire gets smacked as you like crush it against something, if you bang your battery into a rock, you don't want that wire to be able to short out to the one of the terminals on the battery. So I actually like to put a little bit of extra coverage, so put a little bit of heat shrink on for the part where it's going over top of all the cells. And then I also use the Captain tape to insulate the ends of each cell as well. Come out just like that then. I usually like to keep them fairly short. It's long enough that I can get an elastic around here and it'll hold it in place while I'm flying, but I can still manage to plug it into the balance lead on the charger without yanking on the wires too much. So once I'm happy with how it's set up there, then I'll tape down the balance lead and the wires coming off of it. So now I know I can just sort of pull on these and get them tight. It'll keep everything to the same length there nicely. So like we were talking about, the red wire is going to go to the positive terminal by the XT60 here. And then, so I got to make sure these are all in nice neat order, so I'm getting them in the right orders. The one from the other opposite side, that's going to go to this negative terminal. Now the one beside the red wire, it's going to go to the second jumper from the, it's going to go to the second connection after the balance lead. So that one's going here. Then we just do this opposite on the other side, the one right beside the black wire. Then the next connection is coming back up to right here, so this one's just going to go right there. That's the middle one. That one we haven't done yet. This is, oh wait, am I getting those mixed up? No, that's right, yeah. All right, and then our very last one. All right, and then, yeah, this last wire goes right here. Yeah, just like we do with everything when we're soldering. I'm gonna tin these as well. Now, since I'm done with the balance lead for this wire and this wire, so I can cover all this up, so I don't have to worry about any of the other balance leads shorting out on it in a crash or something. Let's just give it a little bit extra protection. I usually prefer soldering the balance leads to the negative terminal, like, you know, out of choosing between these two, I'll solder to that one just because it's a little bit safer to solder to the negative. But it doesn't really matter, you can go to either side. All right, now that I've finished getting the balance lead attached everywhere, first thing you want to do is double check it with a charger or a battery checker. I'm going to use my charger here. So that looks good. All right, so now that we know all those connections are good, we can work on covering the battery up more and getting onto the final wrap and so on. So I'm using this double-sided foam tape here so that it will hold this stuff in place for me now. So there's our little bit of crash protection for the ends. You don't want to add too much of this because it makes the battery longer and it's harder to fit on your quad if it gets too big. And then now I usually give this a wrap with some electrical tape or even duct tape. All right, I've got my glue gun all heated up here. I'm just going to try and get a little bit of glue in around the wires. I'm not using too much here, I'm just trying to fill in the little space around the wires so it'll hold them in nice and snug. going to bend these down so the glue cools with the wires facing this way. All that's left to do now is the reflective stickers or reflective tape and the heat shrink wrap. What I'm planning to do is cover the battery with this reflective tape, and then over top of that put the heat shrink so it sort of keeps the tape on nice and tight, and it'll be sort of permanent that way. I'm just going to go for doing a full wrap around like that, and then I'm putting this one down the side. Should make these batteries pretty easy to spot. I've cut a little notch out in the middle of the tape at the top, so it'll fit around my fit around the wires.